I'm Venice, your host, and here are your entrepreneur resources. We discover the no fluff action steps to help you avoid all the overwhelm and all the BS out there, connecting you with the right mentors, resources, and tools, helping you every step of the way on your entrepreneurial journey. We go live here twice a week, interviewing different entrepreneurs and experts on all areas of business. So make sure to join our Facebook group and look out for the events inside your entrepreneur resources page. You can find all the links in the description box. Our guest for today is Domitille. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. And you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much. So, Domitille is the owner and founder of Mademoiselle Social and a Pinterest strategist. She helps coaches and service providers to create a sustainable marketing strategy with Pinterest as the main visibility and lead generation tool. In this interview, we're going to be looking at how to market your business on Pinterest for service providers. Super awesome topic. Super excited to get started. But before we dive in, do you mind sharing a little bit more about your business and your journey with us?
Yeah. So I started doing Pinterest management about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now. And it kind of like, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't think it would start that early. But I immigrated to the US to be with my husband. And then I'm not sure if you know anything about immigrating to the US, but you are not allowed to work for up to a year. So it's kind of really hard. And then I was like, I'm not going to sit at home like for a year doing nothing. That's awful. So I just started to look into blogging and looking into all those things online. And I just like fell in love with Pinterest that I started using for my travel blog because I traveled a lot before. And I just loved it. And then, I went into helping others doing that. So it kind of like went from I just don't want to sit around doing nothing to, oh my God, I love that. I'm never going to go back to work for someone else.
Yeah, that's incredible. What made you choose Pinterest out of all the different social media platforms out there?
Because I like to call Pinterest the marketing platform for introverts. Because as of like you probably know, Instagram, you got to be on the platform, you got to be on video all the time, you got to pump content, pretty much every day of the week. And on Pinterest, it's much more of it's a little more laid back. It's more back end work that you need to do. So it's just like I thrive into, being alone and being in my quiet environment. So that's why I chose Pinterest. And I also definitely think that when you're an entrepreneur and you need to have a sustainable way of doing marketing, this is one of the best platforms you could choose for. That's why.
Yeah, I think I really like that you mentioned about blogging. You have your travel blog. I think a lot of the time bloggers use Pinterest, right? Because you can drive traffic directly to your blog post. What else? Why else is Pinterest so powerful for entrepreneurs or bloggers or even like we're going to talk about a little bit more service providers? What's the power of Pinterest?
So the power of Pinterest is that it's actually a platform that will allow you to drive traffic to not only your website, but a landing page, a sales page, or anything you want to put on Pinterest. And all that traffic, you're able to own it as opposed to Instagram or Facebook or anything. If you think about it, Instagram, you do grow your followings, but if you don't get them on this email list or on your website, you do not own those followers. And so if they were to disappear tomorrow, you don't have any way to contact them. When with Pinterest, the goal is to get them out of the platform and straight into your own funnel. So you own you don't own their email list, of course. They can leave whenever they want. But you can actually use the work that you've been doing without being scared that tomorrow you won't have any way to reach out to those people.
Yeah. And I don't know about right now, but Pinterest, if you click on the pin, it takes you directly to a landing page, right? Or like whatever link you want it to take you. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So to most of the pins, they did rule out a lot of change in the last years, and now they have introduced this idea pins. So those idea pins, they only live on the platforms. But what they do is that they actually kind of they give a more a new way for you to show your profile to more people, which in the end should help you, show your pins to more people, then therefore get them on your website.
Oh yeah, incredible. I love that. Okay, so you talked a little bit about how Pinterest is different from Instagram. And I mean, one huge thing I think makes it very different is you can have so many different links, right? Because Instagram, it's one link, basically, one clickable link. Yeah, whereas Pinterest, you can have one link for every single pin that you put out there.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So how is it different from other social media platforms as well, like Facebook, Twitter? Oh, there's so many. YouTube, Clubhouse. Like, like how is it different?
So the first main thing that is different is that it is not a social media platform. It is actually a search engine. So it's a lot closer from Google than it is from Instagram, Facebook, Clubhouse, or any other social media platforms. Because it works with keywords. It doesn't necessarily work with popularity of your profile. It doesn't work with, how many followers you have. It's keywords. So you need to understand that when people go on Pinterest, they are there to go out of the platform because they're looking for something. They want to take action on a specific things. And then if we're going into our target audience right now and then service providers, you have to think that those people, they're probably looking something towards what you're working on. And that's where you want to catch them. You want to be able to be like, hey, look, that's what I'm doing. That's where I can help you. Because when they're there, they have questions and they want answers. When opposite to Instagram, when you go on Instagram, it's more for entertainment and you don't necessarily want to leave the platform. You're just like, oh, let's see what this person is up to. Let's see what my family did. Let's see what this blogger I follow, just what country did she go to. So it's a very different perspective when you take into the user intention on the platforms.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So for entrepreneurs that's listening right now, they might be convinced, okay, I'm ready to take a step and start using Pinterest. So how should entrepreneurs start marketing their businesses on Pinterest? What's like the first thing they should do?
The first thing, the first of all is like you go on Pinterest and you just play with the platforms, because a lot of times I have people telling me, I don't understand, I don't know where to start. And then they've never actually logged on the platform. They never pinned for themselves. So it's like, go on there and just like have fun and like use the Pinterest platform as a user. Look for, ideas for your business, look for renovation ideas for your office, see how it works, and then try to upload the pins and then see how that goes. And then from there, you'll be like, okay, I know how the platform works. I know how I like to use it. Now I'm going to be strategic. And to be strategic with Pinterest as a service provider, your first ever step is going to be doing keywords research. Without keywords, there's no way Pinterest is going to work for you, because since it's a search engine, people are looking in the search bar, they're typing a keyword, and that's how your pins are shown. That's how your profile is shown, and that's how your boards are also shown. Everything that is on your profile, on your Pinterest profile, is searchable. And you need keywords to make them, being able to show on those research. That makes sense.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the fact of keywords, because I know that, for example, for Google, it's so competitive. There's so many websites trying to rank for, if you're a coach, like, business coach, for example, that is a very hard keyword to target on Google. But for Pinterest, would you recommend people use long tail keywords, or like how do they do their research with keywords?
So it's the same thing. And then now that Pinterest is a much more used platform, is harder and harder to rank for those like short keywords. So yes, long-term keywords are definitely a way to go. But what you want to do is that you want to be strategic, and you want to use kind of, I like to call that level keywords. So on your profile, like your description and your boards, you go for like more like broader keywords. So you would, for example, you could have a board called business coaching or business coach tips, all those kind of thing. And then when you actually write the description of the boards, or when you actually write the description of your pins, then you go for the long tail keywords. So those pins ranks under the long tail keywords. But the thing is that Pinterest, when they're going to rank your content on the platform, they'll pull the information from your board. So that's why you want to have this business coach keywords on your board, but you want to go deeper in the pin description. So when Pinterest is like, okay, this pin is about this long tail keywords, but then I see that it's been pinned to the business coach keyword, so it means that it goes under that like main business coach topic.
Yeah. So would you say we should think about the board keyword, and then the title of the pin, and then the description of, is that how we should go about it?
Yes. So when you're going to start with your pin, your profile, you're going to do your keywords research. And then when you're going to do your keywords research, you're going to brainstorm all the topics you're covering. If you have a blog, it's really easy to do. You go into your categories and you're like, okay, I'm talking about blogging, I'm talking about search engine optimization, I'm talking about online marketing. So all of those kind of things are like you're beginning to, researching your keywords on Pinterest, and you'll type in online marketing on Pinterest, and then you'll see there's like plenty of keywords to go from there. And then from those keywords, you'll choose the broader keywords to create the boards, but you want to make sure that those boards can house the content you're creating, right? So that's why it has to be researched, because you want to make sure that the keywords you're going to choose is a keyword that you're going to use in your content. But now, obviously, called How to Start a Business, we can't have all our blog posts called How to Start a Business. It's like you have to go a little deeper into, those topics. So your main blog is going to be called How to Start a Business, and then you have a blog that's going to be How to Start a Business online, or How to Start a Business when you have no idea of what you do, or what kind of business can you start. And all of those blogs could go under How to Start a Business, because that's a category you're talking about. But then when you're doing your blog post and when you're writing the pin description, you're going deeper with the long tail keywords that still fall under that board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for boards as well, it can be a little bit confusing, right? Because I'm sure we all have like so many Pinterest boards. And do you recommend pinning the same Pinterest pin to multiple boards, or one Pinterest pin per board? Like, I think this is quite a controversial topic, because different, like the algorithm changes quite a lot. So what's your recommendation for that?
So we are still at one pin to multiple board, as long as it is a relevant board. So if I take my same example of How to Start a Business, you get your board How to Start a Business, and then you have another board that is like business tip for service providers, for example. Well, How to Start a Business when you have no idea where to start is a blog that could go to both of those boards, and that would make sense to pin to both of those boards. So knowing that every time you pin a board, pin to a board, you give more information to Pinterest to categorize that pin, to further categorize it. So you want to pin it to multiple boards, so it has multiple chances to be found under multiple keywords. But you do want to be really careful about what boards you're pinning it to, because you want Pinterest to be able to determine what it is about. So if you were to pin that pin about how to start your business when you have no idea to start to like a home recipe board, that wouldn't make sense, and your pin would have no chance to rank at all. So multiple boards for one pin, yes, with at least 3 to 4 days of interval between the boards. So you don't pin your pin to one board and then the same day to a second board. And then you do not want to pin it to more than 10 boards, because then after that, it can sort of become something that you could pin anywhere, anyway, and it wouldn't make sense anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, Pinterest is going to be like, what are you doing? It can't apply to every single board. No, that makes sense. Okay, great. I mean, those are such great tips. Thank you so much for sharing. I know that there's so many entrepreneurs that's probably wondering, okay, there's so many schedulers out there. I know there's Tailwind, there's, even Canva these days, you can schedule directly through Canva, and there's so many other social media schedulers. What would you recommend entrepreneurs use?
So as a Pinterest manager, managing multiple accounts, I always recommend Tailwind. This is the one I use. This is the one that has been around for the longest time. They're definitely a partner with Pinterest, so you know that you won't get into trouble. But the thing though is that it always depends on how you feel and what you want to do. Because Tailwind is a paid tool. You'll have to pay, I think it's like $15.99 per month or something like that. I cannot stress how important it is to be consistent on Pinterest. So without Tailwind, I think it's really, really hard. But Pinterest does have a native scheduler. So if you're not like, I don't want to pay, or at least I want to see how it's working before I invest in Tailwind, you can schedule your pins via the Pinterest native scheduler. It's just that it means that, so Pinterest gives you only 15 days. So you can only pin basically if you leave 7 days interval between your pins, between each boards, right? You can only pin to 2 boards. The pin. When with Tailwind, you have the entire year basically. So you can have your pin, let's say you do send your pin to 7 boards, then with a week interval, then you can schedule that in Tailwind in one batch, and then you're done, and you don't have to think about that pin until next month when you're recreating pins for that content.
Okay, that's very interesting. I think I've used Tailwind, I've used, the native scheduler, I've used other social media schedulers, and I do agree that Tailwind is very powerful, especially because they have tribes, and Tailwind tribes is amazing, very great way to network with new, other entrepreneurs, other bloggers, and, and they also have a lot of features for example, best time to post, creating intervals, like you said, shuffle your board, shuffle your order of the pins.
It can also one of the greatest thing that I like that not a lot of people know about is that you can create board lists. So when you have a pin or multiple pins that always go to the same boards, then you don't have to retype the board every time. You literally create the board list, you choose the board list, and then you set that, and then you schedule all of that, and then it's done in less than 10 seconds, which is awesome when you have a lot of content.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit more about service providers. I know that for bloggers, it is, optimal to pin different Pinterest pins to different blog posts and, like creating traffic and bringing traffic back to your website. But for
Yes.
service providers, if they don't have a lot of blog posts or even no blog posts, how should they market themselves on Pinterest?
All right. So the first thing that I do want to say is that without a website and without a blog, it's going to be much harder on Pinterest. And that's a fact. It doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it's just that you have to think that when Pinterest, categorize those content, they do want to look for long format content. And like the best long format content we know as of now is a blog post. Because on top of that, with a blog post, you also work with the search engine optimization for Google, which means that by working for Pinterest, you're also working for Google. And then, therefore, like you just work once for two platforms, which allows your website to populate in higher rankings on both platforms. That being said, if you don't have a blog or if you don't want to be blogging more than once a month, you can always use any type of landing pages. So your service pages are a great way to send traffic to your website because then you get straight to service pages as long as they're SEO optimized too. So you do want a long format service page where you thought about your keywords. You can do any opt-in landing pages. You can do any sales, as I could say, the sales page, the course membership, even your Facebook group. If you have a Facebook group, send people to your Facebook group. Instagram posts, you can send people to Instagram posts. It's just that what you need to take into account or when you choose what you're going to pin on Pinterest, when you send people to Instagram or when you send them to Facebook, you have no way of actually assess the results, because on Google and Pinterest, you see how many people clicks on your links, right? And on Google, you can double check who came from where they came from. On Instagram, you'll see you get a new followers, but you have no idea if these followers come from Pinterest or if it comes from one of your Instagram posts or if it comes from a blog that they read from Google up on your social media, right? So it's a thing that when you're a service provider, you need to think about what you want to focus on. And I always, when I work on strategy with service providers, I always prefer a blog content, because when you create a blog, you create such a long format content type that you can repurpose that super easily for Instagram or Facebook or any other platforms. But when you have Instagram and you only do Instagram content, it's much harder to go on and create a long format type of content when you've only been doing shorter content, right? So I always kind of like an inverse pyramid. Like you want to work with like the hardest one, and then after this one, you can just repurpose it for so many platforms. And then on top of that, it's going to work for you on Google and on Pinterest.
Yeah, definitely. I think for service providers that's listening right now, I'm sure many of them at least have one blog post or, like some kind of content that they can share. But for those that want to focus on, for example, growing their email list, right? Like I'm sure people have freebies, opt-in pages. How would like there's so many Pinterest pins on Pinterest. How do we kind of stand out and get people to, join our email list and opt in? And, like how do we design that Pinterest pin to make it stand out from everyone else?
Okay, so the first thing is that you want to follow the rules of design of Pinterest. And then they're usually saying that for standard pin, which we're going to go a little into lingo, Pinterest lingo, a standard pin is that those pins that you find in the search feed. And then usually a 2/3 ratio. So for example, I usually work with 1,000 pixel by 1,500 pixel. And they can also be video pins, but they're not idea pins. When idea pins are the pins that don't go out of Pinterest, right? They live on Pinterest and they don't link outside. Those ones are a little longer in shape. But so for standard pins, you want to work with a 2/3 ratio pin, which is 1,000 by 1,500 usually. On that, there's also 900 by 1,000 or something. I don't necessarily remember, or 6 by 900. You can play with the ratio, but you want a 2/3 ratio. After that, you want to use a really easy to read fonts. Like I love a good script font. I have one on my branding. I love it. But you have to think that most of the people, about 80% of people on Pinterest, use their phone. So if you have a really nice script font, but then they can't read the pin, they'll be like, nah, I'm going to go to the next one because the next one I actually can read what it is about. So really easy to read fonts. You want to use colors that match your branding, because when they're going to click out and they're going to end up on your website, if they end up on a page that doesn't look at all like the pin they saw, like you're already creating some mistrust between the branding you were using on Pinterest and the branding they ended up on. And then you just want to make sure that the pin you're pinning, what you're writing on the the layout of the pin, the text layout, it is what they're going to end on. So sometimes you'll see, and it's very frustrating as a user to click on a pin and then ending up on a completely different page. This is the worst you could do, like, because Pinterest is going to be like, okay, well, you're not treating my users well, so I'm not going to treat you well. So this pin is not going to be shown. And then on top of that, they just like, won't show the rest of your pins because they're like, well, you're not playing by the rules. We're not playing by the rules either. It's kind of it's like, I like to say, be nice to Pinterest and Pinterest will be nice to you. If you're trying to trick the platform, they'll just be like, yeah, whatever, we good, that's our game.
Yeah, exactly. And how often do you recommend people pin? Like how many pins per day or per week that people should start off thinking about pinning?
Okay, I like the start off because there's clearly not a straight answer to that. This is so like, it depends on the kind of the industry you are, on how much content you're creating amounts, because if you're creating 4 blog posts a month, then you can pin 10 to 15 pins a day. You have enough content. If you're creating 1 blog post every 2 months, I don't know how you're going to do to create 10, 15 pins, per day. So I always want to start, when I start with new clients, I always start with at least 5 pins. That's like the minimum you could do. But in those 5 pins, the thing that it is important to understand as of now for Pinterest is that they focus on fresh content. So those pins, they could be what we call repin, meaning that you go on the platform and you just save someone else's pin, but that doesn't really work anymore. Because Pinterest wants fresh content. French, that was a little fresh content. Because if you have to, like, think about it, when you're a user and you're going on Pinterest and then you went yesterday and then the pin you're seeing are the exact same pin that you saw yesterday, and you're like, I've already clicked on that, I've already read that, I want something new. The goal for Pinterest is to get new users or like former users to come back. So they want fresh content. So every time they log on the platform, they got new blogs to read, new idea to discover. So you do want to have this content creation that support 5 pins a day. And then by fresh pins, what we mean is that we don't necessarily mean a new blog post, but we mean a complete new image leading to a URL. So it could be a blog post that you already published on Pinterest, but you need to be using a different design, a different background pictures, and maybe even a little different text, a different call to action. Anything that would make someone see the pin and wouldn't be able to be like, oh yeah, that's the blog I read yesterday. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And how many Pinterest pins do you think it's reasonable to make per blog post? Because for one blog post, like you said, we can make fresh pins over and over again, but Pinterest will be like, oh, you're always sending people to that exact same link, so maybe they won't be so happy. So how many do you think is ideal for one blog post or one landing page?
So we have more to think more about in terms of like lengths of your content on Pinterest. So you could, let's say you're creating a blog in January and you're publishing that blog for the first time ever. So it's a brand new URL for Pinterest. You're creating around 4 pins for that blog and you're spreading it through January, right? So I like 4 pins per blog per month. And depending on how much content you have, you could like rest that content for the next 2 months and then pull it up again in March or April, for example. If you don't have a lot of content, then you're going to want to create more fresh pins and you're going to want to schedule them throughout January, February, and March. So you give it a good amount of pins to be picked up by Pinterest. I definitely would say that you don't want to pin the same URL twice a day. That's definitely a no-go. Ideally, you want to space the URL with every 2 days when you're starting out to not spam the platform. And then usually, the more you're on the platform, the more content you create, and you're more able to space that content even more because you have so much more content to pin in between. But when you're starting and you don't have a lot of content, not the same URL twice a day, and try to space out the URL at least every 2 days.
No, those are such great nuggets. Yes. I'm like, these are such good tips, because I think a lot of the time people, like, especially if it's through the native Pinterest scheduler, it's hard for you to space them out because you're just pinning for the next 15 days and maybe you're focusing on one blog post and then the next blog post and the next blog post. So that's why having a tool like Tailwind really helps you.
Exactly.
Like, just kind of streamline that and shuffle the queue around and you can have fresh content, you can have even evergreen content and get them to come back,
Yes.
like with the loop feature. Yeah, it's super
Exactly.
super powerful. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I know you have a free gift for us. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Yes. So the first thing when you go to Pinterest, as I said, at first I was doing your keyword research and optimizing your account, right? It's always the thing where people come to me and are like, I just put on my profile whatever was coming to my mind. And that's such a no-go for Pinterest. You have to do the keyword research and you have to optimize those accounts. So I got the Pinterest roadmap, which is completely free, and it takes you through the 5 steps to get started on Pinterest, to optimize your account the right way, and actually create your strategy, because that's the other step where people get, kind of turned off by the platform, is that, okay, I have my account and now I don't know what I do. So on that roadmap, you literally follow step by step with like the workbooks to create your accounts. It's not taking that long when you follow the steps. And then in the end, we even talk about strategy, so you can start pinning with like the right amount of pin for your own type of business.
Perfect. Amazing. And for entrepreneurs that's interested in grabbing it, you can get it in the description box. And thank you again for all the tips and strategies. And I'm sure someone listening right now, and probably everyone listening right now, is interested in connecting with you. So do you mind sharing where people can find you online?
Yes, so you can find me on Pinterest, of course, obviously, at Mademoiselle Social. On my website, mademoisellesocial.com, and I am on Instagram, Mademoiselle Social as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the tips, all the strategies, and I'm sure a lot of us have walked away with so many notes. And for people that's listening right now, if you want to get a summary of the interview, make sure to check out our show notes. We have our live interviews with experts here twice a week, so make sure to stay tuned and join our community. Thank you so much again for being here. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'll chat with you very soon, and have a great rest of your day.